Hey everybody, this is Dr. David Evans. We're so happy today to bring you another presentation of A Preacher's Life, the brand new hit show that's airing right now on our brand new television network, the PIC TV network, with 43 million users around the world. Also, our friends on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, LinkedIn, wherever you're watching. We're so happy today to have my beautiful wife, co-pastor Yvette Evans, for 33 years. And we have our queen and king in today, Bishop Ronald and First Lady of Son Demery. Hey. We're so happy for them being on today. This is their time on the Preacher's Life. We're going to showcase them and talk about their career, their calling, the costs, the challenges in Christ in the midst of our crisis of 2021. Bishop Demery, how you doing, sir?
Bless you, Dr. Evans. I am absolutely outstanding. With God's help, I am doing excellent. I'm doing excellent.
Man, I'm so happy to hear you. And tell us a little bit about this lady, this queen sitting beside you.
Yes, this beautiful lady beside me, Lady LaShawn Demery. This year we've been knowing each other for 31 years. We've been dating for 31 years. And we're still dating. Yeah. And last July the 22nd, we actually celebrated 25 years of marriage. And so this is my queen, my baby, my girlfriend, all of that in one. And so I'm blessed to have her. I really am. And so I'm grateful.
Thank you, Bishop. And I can't talk too much. Let you talk about your queen instead of me talk about my queen for 33 years. Yvette Evans. Hey, sweetie, how you doing?
Wonderful. Blessed to be in the land of the living. You know, there's so much going on in our world right now. And we used to hear the old mothers would say, glad to be in the service one more time. Thank God for my life, health, and strength. And we used to mock them back in the day, Lady LaShawn. We're like, oh my God, you know what she gonna say. But as you get older, those words become more meaningful to you. Thank God for my life, my health, and my strength.
Amen. Yes.
Thank you. First Lady, how you doing today, First Lady?
I'm doing exceptionally well. I'm doing well. All is well. Yes.
Yes. Thank you so much. Listen, we're going to go right into our questions today for you and Bishop Demery. We're just moderating. This is your show, Preacher's Life. We're highlighting you guys on part one today. The first question to you, Pastor Demery, is talk about your calling. Who spoke into your life when you were first called into ministry? And do you remember the age when you was called into ministry?
Well, that's a very interesting question. Actually, I would say my grandfather, and my grandparents and my parents actually, and actually I believe that I actually was called as a child, because as a little boy, about 4 years old, I would take my grandparents. They had a trash can that looked like a piece of wood that was slanted on the end, and so when you turned it over, it actually looked like a podium. It looked like a wooden podium. And so I would go to the bathroom and take the trash can out of the bathroom, and I would take it into the living room and turn it over, and that would be my podium. About 4 years old, and I would get one of my dad's shirts or one of my grandfather's shirts. And of course, my grandparents, they've always been in church, so they always had Bibles laying around. I would get the Bible, and I would go to preach. I believe that was a part of my predestination. And so I would preach probably almost like every day. I would run revivals. And at the time I would mimic, because at the time my parents were members of Scripture Church under the late Apostle C.L. Long, when he was on 9th and O. And so I would mark him, mimic him. Bishop Huey Rogers from Brooklyn, Bishop Robert McMurray, who pastored the church where Bishop Noah Jones is now. At that time, it was known, I think, as the Greater Bethany Community Church. And I would mark them, and I would run revivals, baptize my cousins, preach to everybody. And so that was that. I believe that was my call. But of course, I did not accept the call until many, many years later. I believe I was actually about, oh my God, maybe about 30 years old before I accepted the call to preach. And God began to deal with me. And I got saved, even though I was in church. I had not given my life to the Lord until about the age of, I was actually 21, I believe, when I got baptized, and when I received the power of the Holy Spirit, it was about 22. And so I began to work in church with the men's ministry. And not too many years later, I worked with a gentleman, fine man by the name of Joseph Pendleton, Brother Joseph Pendleton, with the leadership of the men's ministry. I mirrored him and gained insight from him. And eventually I was put over the men's ministry in our church for several years. And while I was a part of that ministry is when the Lord, and I had been ordained a deacon, the Lord had called me to preach. And he spoke to me, he was speaking to me, but I wanted to be clear, and I wanted to be sure. And, and so I'm going back and forth with whether God is calling me. You envision yourself in the pulpit, and God's really start giving you opportunities to do things in the church and in the ministry. And he was creating a platform for me. And I went to my grandfather and I told him, I said, I believe that I have been called to preach. I think I've been called. And his response was something that I was not expecting. He said, I don't need you to think that you've been called to preach. I need you to come to me when you know you've been called to preach. And at the time I thought it was kind of harsh because that wasn't my grandfather's demeanor. But he later caused me to understand that preaching is serious business because you're dealing with people's souls, and that you need to know that you have been called by God. And so I prayed and I wanted confirmation, of course, at the time. And we were actually at a national convention of Bible Way Church Worldwide. And this was the time when I was wrestling with whether or not I had been called. And one day I was getting ready to go to one of the services. And that morning I said, Lord, if I am called to preach, I want you to confirm it today. And so as I walked out of the hotel room to go down to the service, there was a deacon that came out of his room that was right by mine. And he came and he said to me, he said something and I didn't hear him. I couldn't understand what he said. And I asked my friend that was with me, what did he say? And my friend responded, he said, when are you going to start preaching? I was like, oh my goodness. Wow, this is confirmation. But I didn't accept it. I ran from the call. I kept going, just working in the church. And I was at work one day, and I remember this vividly. I was at work today. I said, Lord, if you're calling me to preach, I said, let somebody speak to me today before I leave work. And so I worked a shift from 6 a.m. to 2:30 p.m. And I'm getting ready to leave the job. I mean, I'm literally getting ready to walk out of the door. And I'm walking out of the door, and one of my coworkers said to me, come here for a moment. He said, God told me to tell you he's called you, and it's time for you to move into the calling. So after that, I went and talked to my grandfather, and I began preparation as it relates to the preaching ministry. And so that's kind of how that's how it started for me.
That is an amazing blessing, and I see that woman of God sitting right beside you, looking at the story. She done heard this before too.
He said, "You heard the story? Yeah, she's been a part of the journey.
I'm a part of the narrative. I've been with him since I was 16. So actually, he's just rehearsing something that we both experienced together."
And what's amazing, Doctor and Pastor Wright, is our journey. She actually used to do the same thing as it relates to preaching in the living room.
Yeah.
She used to do the same thing as a child.
Yeah. Except I use my grandmother's choir robe as my robe, my ecclesiastical robe. I use her. You'll use granddaddy's shirt.
Yes.
I use my grandmother's choir robe, and so I would use that I didn't have a podium like you. I was just freehand preach, and so we had very similar narratives. So yeah.
Well,
and so, First Lady, how did you know that you were called to the ministry? Not the First Lady role, but just ministry calling upon your life. How did your journey progress?
Okay, actually, my spiritual formation began a little differently than Bishop's did. We were under a different formation. Is that what denomination? A different denomination. My spiritual formation began at Metropolitan Baptist Church underneath the Dr. H. Beecher Hicks Jr. And I was very active in church. I was a part of the youth choir. In addition to, I participated in oratorical contests. And so what actually was, I don't know if I would say call, but there is a term called a birth mythology. And I remember as a child, my grandmother rehearsing a story that when she was out with my sister and I in the community, there was a man who was blind. And my sister and I, we're twins, we were in a double stroller. And the man said to my grandmother, he said, "That one right there is special." And so that kind of was, the beginning of the call. The story being told to me kind of narrated my journey. And so by me participating in the church activities where my spiritual formation began, that's really how I knew that I was called. And actually during this space of us kind of not being in the brick and mortar as much, my tailored call was cultivated. And so now I know that I have been called to the ministry of mental health, spirituality, and mental health. And so I've always known that I was a good conversationalist because the women in my family were women that engaged in conversation. I've always known that's a part of who I am. I would actually go to different stores and I would never meet a stranger. I enjoyed the company of others. And so that kind of transferred into, I guess, my call. I guess if you would say an ordained call, I guess. But I've always known that I've been called to people. But it's not until within the last year that I understand that I've been called to people that have mental health challenges. So I know I've always been called, but I have been called to a particular group, and those that are struggling with mental health challenges.
That's awesome. Especially where we are today, we definitely need to see the holistic ministry, of how to get to people's needs, which is an amazing blessing. I see how, the history of you, Bishop Demery with Bible Way, and the history of your wonderful wife with Beecher Hicks Metropolitan. That's a dream come true because you know how to bless people from all walks of life. Let's go to point number 2. Number 2 is we talked about the calling. And those who are watching right now, you're watching a brand new hit show called A Preacher's Life, an original presentation on the PIC TV network, our brand new network on around the world. Oh, we forgot to say thank you to those who are watching from France, United Kingdom, United States, Brazil, Argentina, those who are watching from around the world. I want to welcome you into our audience today. We have my wonderful wife, co-pastor Yvette Evans, Bishop, and they are showcased today. And number 2, let's talk about the career. I was looking and doing a little bit of reading your bio, Bishop Demery, about your management skills, your management background. How has your management background allowed you to pastor better, to be a better delegator, team manager, leader, role model from that career you was in to transforming that information to ministry? Talk about your career.
Yes, well, that experience, I actually for 20, while I was in college, I actually worked for the Super Value Corporation, which is the parent company to what a lot of you may know as Shoppers Food Warehouse, and I think Super Value was another company at the time. As a department manager for 21 years. And I started as a clerk and worked my way up through management. And certainly that experience has helped me to really learn how to work with different people from all walks of life. Has also taught me the act of delegation and stewardship, being managing people, serving people, and also being responsible for partly over $1 million and some dollar budget a year. So it's really helped me in my pastorate because I've used a lot of those skills to help me in the pastoral role in my call to be a pastor. So it has certainly helped me to be able to insert some of those lessons in this part of my life. And so, yeah, it's helped me to work with people. It has helped me to work under people and learn from different leadership styles. And so it's been very helpful.
That's very powerful. We were just studying in Bible class on Thursday night about the centurion soldier who said, Jesus, come to my house and heal my servant. And Jesus said, where you live, I'm on my way. He said, no, you don't need to come because I'm a man of authority and under authority. I say to one, go, and he goes. So I understand you can just speak the word only.
Yes.
So it's so powerful to be able to transpose those natural skill sets and talents and abilities, competencies, if you will, into ministry. I'm a firm believer of sow in the natural, sow in the spiritual, that they often correlate in God's perfect will. First Lady, talk a little bit about your career, what you do, and how you use that for ministry purposes as well.
Well, I've actually worked at 2 higher academic institutions. And then in 2000, I think it was 2011, I started, my sister owns her own sign language interpreting agency. And so I started working as her administrative coordinator. And so my career has actually been in higher academia as well as being an admin. As far as the tools that I've learned, I am an advocate of higher education. I believe that the tools and that the skill sets that you learn in higher education are very beneficial to kingdom work. And so that's kind of my journey that I've done at admin work in two separate universities, as well as assisted my identical twin sister who owns her own sign language interpreting agency. And while working at both of these institutions, they were not of our hue, they were not our culture. And so I've learned to engage with different cultures. I'm familiar with us. I'm familiar with our language. I'm familiar with how we interact. I'm familiar with our jargon. And so while I was at those 2 academic institutions, it taught me the different way to engage different cultures while also being respectful of those cultures, although those are not a part of my upbringing. So those skills have allowed me to be able to engage in our multi-generational and multi-congregation that is now forming at Bible Way, and how to engage in a way that it is that the language that I use is able to be interpreted across cultures. And so because of that, I think it's been very beneficial in our kingdom work.
That's so powerful. So powerful. I believe there's diversity in thoughts, There's wisdom in diversity. But I didn't know you were a twin. Oh my God, there's
Yes.
two powerful women.
Identical. I have an identical twin sister. We're 6 minutes apart, and we were married the same day, so we had a double wedding. So we got married. And our first set of children, our first two, the oldest two, are actually 4 months apart. So we're actually pregnant at the same time as well. So yeah, we've had an interesting.
Bishop, you don't get them mixed up, do you?
No, not at all. Not at all. I think probably the first 2 weeks when I met them, I would get them mixed up. But after that, I was able to distinguish the difference in their voices
and personality,
their height and personalities.
My sister is more passive. I am the more, well, people like to use the word aggressive, but I prefer more assertive twin. So I am the more assertive and she's more passive. So that's how you're able to difference in our personalities.
And now they don't even look alike to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the membership gets us
most
confused.
people, the membership gets them confused all the time.
Absolutely.
You know, they're talking to her sister and think they're talking to her. You know, First Lady, I was just wanted to let you know. That's my sister. I'm the sister.
Right. I'm the sister.
Yeah, that could be a big blessing, man. Somebody put a $500 gift in her sister's hands at First Day. I just felt led to bless you. I felt led, the Spirit led me to bless you with a big gift.
But she always
Lady has made sure that you can distinguish her from her sister. That is part of that rib. She was perfectly designed for you. So
yes.
That's
awesome. That's interesting that you would say that, Pastor Evans, because in my heart, I believe that we were made for each other.
Yeah, I believe that too. Yeah. Awesome. Without a doubt. Because whatever he is, I'm not. Whatever I'm not, he is. And so we
designed it.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That's the same way we roll, man. We've been together for, man, we dated for 8 years, I think. 7 years.
Wow.
We dated. 3 years. And she made me wait for I think 2 months for a kiss, man. So I was like, man, you know, I had the waves in my hair, man. I had smooth butter skin and wingtip shoes, bro. Man, I was like the smoothest dude in the city, man. You know, you could, and I had 3 calls every day. I worked at the rent-a-car place. Every day I came to church, Mount Calvary, I had different cars, so they didn't know whether I was a dealer or.
Please don't get him started. This is about Bishop.
Love it.
This is about Bishop and Lady Demery.
Don't feel bad. Our first kiss was after 4 months, so don't worry about it.
We did actually know each other for 8 years, but when we became engaged, we were engaged for 3 years before we got married. So what a blessing. What a blessing.
So let me get back on track since my wife for 35 years said get on track. So let me keep this going. Everybody's watching right now. You're watching our brand new hit show on the PIC TV network called A Preacher's Life. And we are interviewing today our VIP guest from the Bible Way Church, 1100 New Jersey Avenue, Bishop and Lady Demery. They are special people in our city, and they're on our show today. We're going to do part 1 now, and then we'll do part 2. Bishop Demery, we're going to talk about, and Lady Demery, the cost. We did the calling, we did the career, the cost in ministry, time management. I can look at your wife and see she's a family woman. I can look at the cost of still keeping your family together. I believe you're like me. We're family men first. A lot of people say church first and all of that. But I believe God made Adam and Eve, and that was his first ministry was to her. You know, so let's talk about the cost. Come on.
Yeah, well, I think you nailed it, Bishop, because I think a lot of times pastors focus, and we do this so passionately, and we do it so intensely that a lot of times we do it and we forget about our families. And I've been asked this question so many times. And I think one of the worst things that could ever happen for me as a pastor and a preacher is to preach and win the loss and lose my family. I believe that there is a order to things, and I don't believe that I'll ever be able to manage time, and so I have to do task management, and I really have to determine how I'm going to be intentional in my schedule with dealing with the saints of God and God's people and my family, because after I get finished ministering to the family that's lost a loved one, after we get finished providing marital counseling sessions for individuals getting married, there is a woman that God has called me to and that has given me, who is a gift to me, who I need to spend time with, and I need to get to know her because she is growing, she is evolving, and she's not the woman that I married 25 years ago. And so I think James is very clear when it tells us to dwell with our spouse according to knowledge. And so we have to constantly get to know them. We have to date them. We have to spend time with them, because I think one of the worst things you can do is come home from the church and come home and lay in the bed next to a stranger. And so we have to be intentional with task management so that we're able to have proper time with our family and with our children. God, a lot of times, I believe this, that God calls a man or woman, and he calls their family. And that ministry is something that you ought to do together. But you have to make sure that you set some parameters and some boundaries so that you're able to minister to your family. I mean, at the end of the day, once I get finished preaching the funeral, my baby girl has homework that she needs help with. My oldest daughter needs advice about her relationship. And my son needs some guidance about the decisions that he's making. And so I have to be available for these things. Because at the end of the day, when you get finished pastoring and preaching, you're going to have to deal with your family. And I don't want to be a stranger to them when it's all said and done. You know, I learned from my grandparents. And of course, he pastored, and he was very heavily involved in organization. And at the church, I mean, he preached more funerals than anybody that I know. But they always made time for family, and they showed me the importance of family. So I would tell any pastor that you have to be intentional with making time for your family. So, yeah, so I hope I answered it. I hope I did.
Yeah, that's so important. And I want to ask this similar version of that question to First Lady, because as a First Lady myself, I understand how the church sometimes can put so much emphasis, focus, and pressure on the pastor that the First Lady often gets overlooked and underappreciated, and people don't always know the costs that comes with being a First Lady. Sometimes they see the glory and don't know your story. So talk a little bit, First Lady, about that cost of being a First Lady for all those women out there who are aspiring to marry a pastor and a bishop. Let them know that there's a lot that comes with this responsibility.
It is. I am fortunate that the context in which I am placed it was a predominantly older generation, and so their expectations of me as a younger wife and a mother was not that I needed to be in the space all the time. So I was fortunate that that the context which I was placed were mothers, and when I say mothers, I'm not necessarily referring to chronological age. I'm referring to wisdom. And so they understood that as a mother of three, because my children were like 13, 14, I guess Anaya was, in Autumn. We just had Autumn, right? My youngest baby, when we transitioned into leadership position. And so I think I was fortunate that I didn't have the expectations of always being in the space that maybe other pastor wives had, because I came into an already established church. Also, prior to my husband transitioning, I had already made a decision, and I was very clear that my children, my husband would be a priority. I can remember my husband and I having a conversation, and I said to him, my children will never be able to blame me or to say that I chose, and do you remember that, the church over them. You will never be able to use that as an argument or an excuse for your behavior. So that was something I was very clear on. And for those that desire to be a, I guess, pastor's wife or first lady, my suggestion is this: make sure that your heart is healed before you attempt to be the set lady of the house. Because if you have areas that you're struggling in, such as abandonment, rejection, if you are a survivor of domestic abuse, sexual abuse, those issues will transfer into how you engage the congregation in which you have been assigned to. So if you desire to be that, desire to be well, desire to be healed, desire to be able to discern what is taking place. If you are a woman that is paranoid about your spouse or about whoever you're in relationship with, talking to people of the opposite sex, then I will tell you, this is not the road for you. You will have to be clear on who you are as a woman, clear on who you are as a woman, and clear on your relationship with your spouse. Bishop Demery and I think our relationship is successful outside of the church because we understand that being a bishop and a first lady is a part of our life. It's a part of our identity. It is not my sole identity. It's not his sole identity. And when I say that, at any day, my husband can decide, based on what the Holy Spirit says to me, that I don't want to do this anymore. I have to have an identity outside of this role. And so I suggest to those that you desire this, make sure that you have an identity outside of this position. And if you are not well, and if you are not stable, if you are not confident in who you are as a woman, this position, this role, the demands have the potential to destroy you. I was fortunate that I was raised with very strong women. So before I came into the position, I had already been affirmed. I didn't need the accolades. I didn't need, for people to carry my bags. I was already affirmed. I knew who I was. And so I didn't struggle in that. And unfortunately, Pastor, there are some women that strive because they weren't affirmed at home. It's not really about the position. It's about the perks of the position. And because no one ever acknowledged them, I am now in a space where I'm being acknowledged. But they don't understand, even with the acknowledgement, there's going to be struggle, and there's going to be warfare. And so you have to be very clear on who you are as a woman before you operate in this position. Because if you don't, it will cause you to have mental health challenges, paranoia, anxiety, all those things will come up. And also this position can trigger things that were never healed. So that's why I'm saying, as a pastor's wife or first lady, whatever term people choose to use, make sure you are well. Make sure you participate in spiritual practices. And when I say that, I'm talking about fasting, praying. Sometimes I turn on music and I dance because it creates positive energy in my body, endorphins. So I do all of these things so that when I go into the house, we have been out of the brick and mortar for a while, but when I go in there, I am well, I'm spiritually balanced. And in addition, by me taking courses in mental health, I know the spirit that I'm dealing with, right? I know, and my husband would tell you that I'm very engaged with the women. And so they share their stories. So I know what the triggers are. I know what to say to Mary Sue, and I know what to say to Jane, based upon them being comfortable with me and sharing their stories. So as a pastor wife, you have to be very comfortable in who you are, and so that the women that you have been assigned to are open to share their narrative, so you know how to engage with them. So I hope I answered your question.
No, that was awesome.
Powerful.
Yeah, I'm telling you, James Brown made a song, "Papa Don't Take No Mess," man. I can tell your wife and my wife, Doc, they just like this. You and my wife, Papa don't think they got it together, man. So you gonna keep us on the straight and narrow path, bro.
Yes.
So God is so good, man. He knew who to give us. He definitely knew who to give us.
Yes.
Listen, those who are watching right now, you're watching A Preacher's Life, our brand new hit show, original show presentation on PIC TV network, our brand new network that's on right now. And those who have Roku, you can look at it in the search bar and download it, and you can see this show and all of our audience around the world watching with us. We're so excited for our special guest today that we're interviewing, Bishop Ronald and Lady Demery. They are on today. We're going to take a break and come right back in part 2. We're going to talk about mentors and heroes, names like Bishop Noel Jones and the Hammer from Alabama. We're going to talk about Howard Tillman and names that Bishop Butler and Apostle Silvers and Bishop Smallwoody Williams, one of the greatest preachers in our lifetime. We're going to talk about him, Apostle Smallwoody Williams. We're going to talk about some great leaders today, Bishop Brooks and Bishop Weathers and, great Bishop Green and others, Bishop C.L. Long. We're going to talk about some of the heroes and mentors that blessed your life in part 2. And then we're going to got to talk about Dr. Beecher Hicks, because your wife was served in that ministry, man. We got to give them a shout out down in Metropolitan. So you don't want to miss part 2. We're going to take a break and come back with part 2. And then when you come back, everybody, let somebody know the Preacher's Life television show is on. And we have Bishop Demery and First Lady Demery from the Bible Way Temple Church. We'll be back right after this.